Welcome to Faith Fondue, a new podcast featuring author and speaker Haley DeMaria and teacher and blogger Ann Strickers. Faith Fondue will feature a melting pot of topics, ignited by a flame, our faith, and guided by the Holy Spirit. Each week will feature a theme, and the theme for this week's episode is Lent, Week 4, Almsgiving. Good morning, Anne. It's the week of March 14th, and we are talking about the third pillar of Lent as we covered prayer and fasting, and today we discuss almsgiving. So according to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, almsgiving is, quote, a work of justice pleasing to God. But to me, it's kind of a funny word. I always think of alms as palms or psalms, maybe because they rhyme. But of course, almsgiving is charity. It is giving to others and acts of service. So, Anne, welcome. It's great to talk to you again.
Hi, Haley. Yes, it's hard to believe this is episode 17. And I think when we were talking, you said, is it giving alms? Alms, how do we say it? I think, we give alms, right? Almsgiving.
We talk about almsgiving, but I guess we give the alms.
Yes.
Maybe that's why I think it's such a funny word, because I'm not quite sure how to use it.
Right.
We just need to do it.
Well, I always think of that noun, like we give thanks, and then the noun is thanksgiving, or we give alms, and the noun is almsgiving. And for some reason, this word always reminds me of alma, which is the Spanish word for soul. So I like to make that connection. But I looked, did some research on the word, and it's from the Greek, and I won't even try to say it. But the word alms is Greek for compassion or pity. And that was an invitation just to think about the act or the giving of alms. Compassion resonates with my heart. Pity is always just a harder word. Like to pity someone, to me, seems like you've placed yourself above him or her. But I suppose there are times when it really is the appropriate word to have pity on something.
Yeah, and maybe in the historical sense of the word, pity was compassion, and maybe as we've become more of a hierarchical society or country that we live in, that pity does become looking down with a negative connotation. But yeah, I would agree with you. I would rather have compassion for someone than pity for someone.
Yeah. So lots to pray with in terms of almsgiving and the act of doing it. So what's hot for you this week?
Oh my gosh. Right. Yeah. A lot going on this week. Well, this past week, one of the hot topics that I know both you and I and many people around the country and the world watched was the Prince Harry and Duchess Meghan interview with Oprah. And, it was interesting. It is a hot topic, and there was a lot revealed and exposed and shared and questioned. I'd like to think of the royal family as a family that uses their position of influence to give alms, to practice the art of almsgiving. They do, claim and share and try to do that. But they are a family, and they clearly have all of the warts and bumps that all families have. So that is definitely a hot topic with many differing opinions on both sides, but certainly eye-opening. And clearly they'll have to really look at who they are and who they want to be as a family. So that was last week. This coming week, of course, is St. Patrick's Day. For I, who is, on my year-long study of the saints, it is the feast day for St. Patrick. I think here in the United States, we forget that sometimes. It is a feast day. It is a holy day. I remember being on campus one year, and this doesn't always happen at Notre Dame. So often spring break is scheduled over St. Patrick's Day, so the students aren't on campus. But I remember
we always thought that was intentional. Did you? That was like the.
Oh, it was definitely
that was
intentional.
The belief.
Yeah, no, it was for sure, and so intentional. I think that most classes, I think it was scheduled so that every graduating class had one St. Patrick's Day they were on campus, but the other three they were not. But I remember very clearly, the rector of our dorm, Lyons Hall, Sister Kathleen Beatty, who is Irish herself. She used to get so upset that there was so much partying going on on St. Patrick's Day, and I remember her demeanor and just the real frustration in sharing with me. It is a reverent day to honor the patron saint of
Mhm.
Ireland, and just really felt like it had been commercialized in a way that we tend to do with a lot of most Christian holidays.
Right.
And but the Irish like to party, both in Ireland, both the Ireland Irish and the Fighting Irish at Notre Dame. Um, and I also think celebrating the saints is something we should do. They certainly have lived lives that we should mimic and try to model ourselves after. The saints, in many ways, have practiced those good works of justice. Their almsgiving we can certainly mirror, but we should celebrate the saints as well. So I'm not against a good old fashioned party where you're enjoying your neighbor and maybe raising a glass to celebrate our saints. But it can probably be a little controversial as well in terms of what happens on St. Patrick's Day.
Well, I think you raised some really good points. And, in Ireland, it is a national holiday. And yes, it's not a B list holiday here, at least in San Francisco. There are plenty of Irish Americans. And just thinking about it in a feast day versus, yeah, a day to drink green beer, to wear green, kiss me, I'm Irish, right, is a very different experience. But, growing up, I loved St. Patrick's Day. My grandparents are both from Ireland, and I was in Irish dancing long before River Dance. So we would be in the St. Patrick's Day parade. And it is just a day of celebration. And I think of culture. And, we're very proud. I'm very proud I'm Irish. I feel like that has meant many great things in my life. And so many Americans do claim Irish ancestry. So it's the one day everybody can be Irish and enjoy the spirit and the humor, I think, of the Irish people. We've talked about humor before. But when you were speaking, I thought, I have St. Patrick to thank for essentially my Catholic faith. And he converted, taught the Irish people using the shamrock, the Trinity, the 3-in-1. And were it not for him, would we be Celtic pagans? I don't know. And so, my dad's side is Bavarian, so they're Catholic. It might have ended up okay. But yes, as a religious leader, his impact was incredible. And so, yes, maybe I'll take some time and think about my ancestors and their faith on March 17th. So thank you.
Absolutely, as you're wearing your green and maybe raising a glass to toast him as well.
Oh, you know it. And I think people who have a birthday on St. Patrick's Day, I envy those people. In fact, one of my friends who is Irish, he told his wife, if you have our child on St. Patrick's Day, I will give you a bonus. And sure. And I imagine that bonus was like maybe a better piece of jewelry, or I don't know how he's such a character that it's just the story is just so appropriate. And of course she did. She had the baby on March 17th, which I think is the coolest thing ever. And I have friends whose parents met on St. Patrick's Day. I love all of that stuff. So yes, March 17th is a day. It's definitely on my calendar. I'm having my golf team wear green that day. I've already told them for practice. And I look forward to, like I said, everyone can be Irish on St. Patrick's Day.
Absolutely. Yeah, that definitely is something to celebrate. But this year it's an interesting holiday because it marks, kind of a tough memory from last year around this time. At least here in Maryland, our governor shut down pretty much everything. We went into shelter in place, the 5 p.m. the night before
Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day. And, we have good friends who have owned a Irish bar and restaurant for 25 years, and St. Patrick's Day is their biggest day of the year, not only financially, but just from a community standpoint. And they plan it for weeks. And, by March 16th last year, they had invested in it financially with alcohol and food, and were expecting the massive crowd that they normally get. And, that it was crickets the next day. And,
Yeah.
that was a real blow to them and the community to not have what is a celebration and a time for, community and celebration. So that was an interesting St. Patrick's Day last year, I know, for many people.
Agreed. And we were a couple days ahead of you in terms of the shutdown. And I remember, I think it probably was the 12th of March. I was on West Portal, this street in San Francisco, and was with a friend. And we ran into her friend. And this woman is actually the sister of my friend. And she said, they won't take my holiday away from me. And they did. I mean, not they did, the virus did. I don't know. But, she just, it spoke to how much she loved St. Patrick's Day. And truth be told, this woman died in November, and it wasn't COVID related. But I always think of like that is like my final encounter with her, like her love of St. Patrick's Day. And I believe she's with God in heaven, and hopefully enjoying her holiday with St. Patrick himself this year. So God bless her. And just a stark memory, but it's kind of a tender, sweet insight, like that, like this day means something to people. Like I
Yes.
said, I mean, I kind of dismiss it, oh, my ancestors and want to be pagan, but it really means something for people, whether it's memories, connection with family, whether it's, celebrations, or even just an acknowledgement of the faith that we have. It is a day to honor and celebrate in whatever way you can. So
Right. So if we were talking about March holidays, this would not be B list.
no, no,
This is
no,
this
no,
is
thank
this
you.
is legit. It's a real one.
But thinking of Ireland and our theme of almsgiving, Mother Teresa, I think she's just this example of almsgiving personified. But I don't know if people know, when she early in religious life, her community sent her to Ireland, and that's where she learned English.
Oh
And
wow.
so she was in Ireland for many years as a religious sister. She left that community and then started the Missionaries of Charity. But she too has a connection to Ireland. And I would love to learn a little bit more about that. But I was teaching about her this week because there's a program called Sidewalk Talk, and it started in San Francisco. And basically, it's a ministry, and it costs nothing for setup or promotion or participation, other than time. And the ministry is people, oftentimes many of them are counselors, but they simply just ask people on the street, do you want to be heard? And so they offer listening. And I say this in relationship to Mother Teresa because originally, when the missionaries, somebody in the US, they wanted the Missionaries of Charity to come to the United States. And she said, we can't. Your poverty is too great. And the person was like, wait, what? Like you're in Calcutta. Like we don't have Calcutta in the United States. We have, a welfare system, we have safety nets, we have all these different structures. But she said, no, your poverty is loneliness. And I can't just cure that right away. And that was a stark and a revealing insight, because she's right. You can feed somebody, you can give them shelter, you can hold a dying person, but can you cure loneliness? And one of the biggest cures for loneliness is just allowing a person to feel heard or understood, or let them work through their feelings. So I thought the Sidewalk Talk was a great ministry, and it's throughout the world now, the woman who started it. And they just offer to listen to people. And she said, the founder said, sometimes it's even easier to tell a stranger your problems than it is a close friend. Part of it is just the feelings, like we need to acknowledge them and sit with them and let them run like a cloud kind of through our psyche or whatever.
Right.
And so I just thought, what a great gift and a way to give alms. A different way of giving alms is to, literally be there for someone, or just to listen to them and help them feel heard.
Well, and I love that because I think some people, when they hear almsgiving, they think, well, I don't have money to give, or I, don't have opportunities to, do actually acts of service. But listening, we can all listen. We can all minister to the lonely in that way. And sometimes loneliness isn't somebody, that you don't, it's somebody you don't know. We probably all have people in our lives who are lonely, and
Hmm.
could use someone to listen to them. And that too is almsgiving. It doesn't have to be grandiose. We don't have to all be Mother Teresa in the scope of what she's doing. It could be something simple as picking up a phone and calling someone you know is lonely and just need someone to listen to. So I love that. I'm such a big Mother Teresa fan.
Yeah.
And these are reasons why, because even in the massive global scope of the work that she did, she gives us very real examples of simple things that are extremely meaningful that we can do.
Yeah. And part of teaching about this was just when you're right, when we think of people who are lonely, we often think of elderly people, but some of the studies have indicated about young people. And, we could talk a lot about the effects of social media, but that, in a sense, social media can actually isolate people and that a lot of young people are lonely. And I read this post by a former colleague and just marking this anniversary of COVID, he had to tell the students that their Kairos retreat was on hold and just the memory of that. And he said, I'd like to acknowledge that some of the real heroes of this pandemic have been young people and just young people who maybe have felt really lonely or disconnected and haven't complained, who've been unheard and still done the good work. It was so moving to hear that. So I thank Justin for this. He's such a great teacher, some insights like that.
Yeah, and that's a great note for me to make for future podcasts. We could spend a number of weeks, maybe once we get through the Easter season and get back into ordinary time, talking about the pandemic and the lessons that we've learned. And, once we've been kind of over a year later with an end, or at least a light at the end in sight. I don't know if the end is in sight, but we're getting there. So that would be a great topic, I know, for us to explore later. Well, Anne, you had an interesting lunch this week that I really enjoyed reading about on your blog and would love to hear more about. So, who did you have lunch with this week?
Yeah, so I had lunch with Miss Serena Williams, and she was the University of San Francisco. They have a speaker series called the Silk Speaker Series. She was their guest. It was in a virtual setting. It was at 12 noon. So I literally, turned on my computer and heard one of my favorite athletes speak. And I was talking about this with my students. There are over like 500 biographies written about Abraham Lincoln. And I said, why do people continue to write about Abraham Lincoln, right? Haven't we exhausted everything? And yet people decide to write about Abraham Lincoln because they feel like they have something to say. And I have taught and read a ton about Serena Williams. I'm not going to say I'm the world's leading expert, but I feel like I know her. And I sat down at this interview and you still learn new things. And, just a couple of insights. I think for one thing people don't know about her, I think she's really funny. And it's because she kind of has this humor that's real deadpan and you might miss it. She has a great eye roll. Like she just laughs at her daughter or herself. And I want people to know that, that she's funny. And then she just talked about what motivates her. And when the question was asked, I thought she dismissed it at first. She's like, I guess what motivates me is love. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, this is a woman who is one title shy of tying for the all-time record with Margaret Smith Court. She has 23 Grand Slam wins. She's the winningest player in the Open era. I just thought it would be to be the best of all time and just end the conversation. But she said it's love because she loves the game. She loves competition. She's like, what motivates me is love. And I thought, thank you, Serena. What a great insight. It's so simple, but that's so true. So I wish her well. I think the interview might be available. It's not the best interview, but it was just fun to engage with, one of my favorite athletes at a lunch hour and see where it would go. And, she's talks that she would like to have a second child, sibling for her daughter, Olympia. And she also wants to be the greatest of all time. So I just think about, she didn't address it, but I think about in her life, like she's 38 and she has choices to make because she knows the clock is ticking, not on her pregnancy. That's not what I want to talk about, but in terms of like her athleticism, like these athletes, tennis, is so demanding. As you have a cousin who's on the tour and they, what you can do at 38 is dramatically different than what she was doing at 18. So if she wants those titles, she knows the window is tight, and then pregnancy would keep her out for a little bit of time. She almost died in her last pregnancy. She has a tendency towards blood clots. So it's something I think hopefully she talks to her daughter about and her husband, obviously. But I'll be a, I'll support her in whatever way. I want to acknowledge that, like many of us, she has tough decisions to make. So I wish her only the best.
Yeah, I do too. And it's just a reminder, as we're talking about loneliness, that's a very lonely place to be. There is really no one else who understands what position she's in. And, yes, we think of her as, wow, she's an amazing tennis player. She is the greatest of all time, in so many different ways. And, she has this remarkable life that we see on the outside, but that doesn't mean there's not loneliness there. There doesn't mean that
Yeah.
there's not, the wants that she has that she might not be able to attain, like we all do, whether it's a second child or, something in her career. So, it's a good reminder that even people who seem to have it all, or are the goats, the greatest of all time, there's probably loneliness there as well. In different ways
Yeah.
than we might
Well, I wish you
experience.
had interviewed her, Haley, because I think that's a great question. I do. And, like I said, I'm not an authority, but I know how she would answer it. I mean, she has Venus, who is essentially like her twin. They're 15 months apart.
True, true.
And I think that's abated the loneliness because tennis can be very isolating as a sport. And, that's part of their connection and understanding is that they understand the other person. But her daughter is over 2 years old now. And she said, oh, I wanted them to be close in age, just like I was to my sister. And I've kind of missed that little window. So, that's why when I read the article, I thought, oh, this is an imminent decision. This isn't something that she's like, putting off for another 2 years to see if I can close in on that title. So we'll see with
Yeah,
Serena
no,
Williams.
no,
She
no.
always keeps us guessing.
Yeah, stay tuned for sure. And it's interesting, Ann. I saw. I don't have the TV on much at my house, but there was some basketball I wanted to watch this week, and I saw an ad for the Players Championship that is happening actually right now, which is amazing that you are willing to tape this podcast with me at a time when there's golf being played. So thank you, I appreciate that. But I always think of you when I see golf, and especially these, these major tournaments. And one, I'm thrilled they're playing. For all the golf fans
Yeah.
out there, I know everyone's happy to have golf back on TV. But two, do you plan on watching it this weekend? What do you have going on for the?
Oh
Is
yeah, no,
it the
no. I mean,
TPC? I think is that the correct how you call it TPC?
well, TP's the Players Championship. Yeah, very good. And they
Okay.
sponsor some other.
Okay.
I don't totally understand that structure. That would be a good question. As opposed to the PGA or the USGA, so many acronyms in sports, but so many other things in sports. I was thinking, this tournament is known as the fifth major. So it's a high profile, popular tournament. It's known for the 17th hole. For people who don't know anything about golf, there's this hole and the pin is on the island. So it's very dramatic and it makes it really fun to watch. But the fifth major, I use that term, everybody uses that term. And I thought about that in sports. So you were talking about basketball, Haley, like in basketball, they have the sixth man, or in football, or sixth person, I should say, because you could be the sixth woman. In football, the 12th man. This idea, this concept that exists in sports where you have the team, you have the structure, but there's that extra one. And I don't know if that's our desire for excess or just way to be included. It's just a fun play on words or concepts in sports. And Jim Martin, the Jesuit priest, said, when you go to Jerusalem, it's like the Holy Land, excuse me, it's reading the fifth gospel. So I had some fun just kind of playing with those ideas and thinking, I wonder if there's a fourth person of the Trinity. And God is infinitely creative. So I have a feeling the Lord would like that question. I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as we get to
Not
our,
trying to be irreverent. I'm just trying to be playful.
yeah,
So,
no, not at all. And
please don't take it as blasphemy.
no, and I think, as we get to our takeaways, I might bring that up again. But I love that question because it's kind of a catchphrase: fifth major, sixth man, 12th
Yes,
man. The Seattle Seahawks have kind of
sure.
branded the 12th man.
Exactly.
But those are great. Those are great thoughts, especially with the Trinity as we move into our spiritual stew. And, keeping with the sports theme that we love to always bring in and pop up, my thoughts this week in spiritual stew is not necessarily a gospel or a biblical reading, but it was a quote that I came across that's really stuck with me this week, especially knowing that we were going to talk about almsgiving. And that is, it's a quote from Muhammad Ali. And, he has said, service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And I love that for so many reasons. One, talking about almsgiving, service to others. That's just clearly fundamental to this quote and to Muhammad Ali as well. But, is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. So rent is temporary. That's not something you buy. It's not something that you're here forever. And, really our time here on earth is temporary. And, I think it speaks to that as well. The service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. So we are here on earth temporarily, and we are called to serve others while we are here, so that when we get to that place of permanence, we can move forward.
Awesome. And, I love thinking. It's hard for me sometimes to think about eternal life or the next life. So thinking of it in this way, I think is just it's, what am I trying to say? It's just a beautiful image to think about. So thank you for sharing that, Haley.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure what happened with our technical glitch there, but we will either try to edit that out or that ding you just
For
heard.
acknowledging that.
Yeah.
Your screen froze. That we, for our listeners, Haley and I meet before our session. And so I knew, I had a sense of what you might say about that quote in our spiritual stew.
Yep. So that ding you just heard was me texting Anne saying, we might have to have Edward edit that out. So we will work on that. Not sure what happened there, but.
And we'll post that quote into our Twitter feed.
Oh, for sure. That's a great thought. So that's what I've been pondering this week. Those words, the gospel according to Ali, which I'm sure I shouldn't say, but I did.
Oh, I like it. No, yeah. Yeah, and I think about his own faith journey a little bit, right? I imagine he was raised Christian and obviously became Muslim, and that would be interesting to learn a little bit more about that as well. But for my piece of the stew, what's cooking for me, again, teaching this week about the corporal works of mercy and how linked they are to almsgiving. So it's Matthew 25. I always think there's a couple of passages of scripture people should memorize. This is certainly one of them, where Jesus teaches about clothing the naked, feeding the hungry, giving, drink to the thirsty. And what a privilege to be able to teach about that. But, one piece that I was able to add for my students this week is, the question at the end is, when, Lord, did we see you ill or in prison and visit you? And, he does this in a parable. So it's not Lord, but the king. He uses this other image. And he says, amen, I say to you, whatever you did for one of these least brothers of mine, you did for me. And one thing that's really important for people to know in that time is that if you were wealthy or rich, you were blessed by God. If you were therefore poor or marginalized, you were, right? You had done something to offend God or had, broken that relationship. Correct. Right. So Jesus is shifting the paradigm. He's saying, no, in fact, when you've done that for the least of us, you have done that for me. So he's changing the teaching. And I think that's important to carry that perspective into, right, our understanding of scripture. And obviously we're called to do the same. So.
Yeah, no, that's actually interesting because I'm familiar with that shift, but I've never actually thought of it in those terms. Jesus was, what a shock that must have been for, people in biblical times to hear Jesus speak about the poor when they had just been trained to believe such a fundamental difference between the poor and the wealthy.
Exactly. Yes. And I think that's the word, shock. It must have been shocking. And that might be lost on us. We're like, yeah, I know. But it's also no, this is a norm and a belief that's widely understood. And here comes this teacher who's changing what I've known to be true. And right. If I'm poor, I'm like, thank you. Because what have I done, Lord? Why, the Lord hears the cry of the poor. thank God, and um, that's, what we're called to do when we give alms. So
We are, and I love that quote. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. I won't sing it for you, but that's it's a beautiful song.
it is. It's not one of my favorite singing psalms. I think I enjoy praying with it, but like, I don't know. When I hear it, I'm like, here we go, which is terrible. But being honest, okay.
That's the
So,
cradle Catholic in you. For those of us who are newer to the faith, we
yeah.
still enjoy it. So give me a few more years.
Yeah.
Oh
Thank you.
gosh, but what great takeaways for us as we move, into this extraordinary week. We are a year into this pandemic and in a year into the shutdown. And thank you, Anne, for taping this podcast early with me. I'm actually traveling this weekend. I am fully vaccinated, but will of course take all the precautions. I'll be in South Bend. I'm going to visit my coach. I know we've mentioned Tim on the podcast some before. Ann and I spend Sunday mornings in Mass with Tim, praying for Tim. He is battling pancreatic cancer, and unfortunately, his wife Jackie is battling her own health crisis right now too. So I'm planning to just spend some time with them and with my parents, and of course with my son who's in school there, James. But really there to help Tim and Jackie and to make and freeze food and walk their dog. And it's interesting as we were talking about this week and almsgiving. Because do I see this as service to others? We're on spring break next week, and someone asked me what I was doing, and when I told them, they kind of gave me a funny look, like, why would you spend your spring break, first of all, going to South Bend, to
Yeah.
help, doing that? And it
Balmy South Bend. Yeah, warm and balmy.
right, exactly.
The ever yes.
Yeah, I'm
Spring
probably
break destination.
probably the only one going to the snow for spring break that's not going skiing. But it's to
Hmm.
me, it's just I have to. I'm called to. When someone's given you so much in your life, you feel obligated to. But it's not even an obligation; it's a privilege to give back and help them.
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily know if I see this as service to others, as Muhammad
Yeah.
Ali states, or a work of justice pleasing
Mm.
to God, as the Catechism states.
Yeah.
I think it's just who we're called to be as Christians, or even just a good person. It's sort of it's returning the love and the care that's been extended to me. So I'm excited to get there, and hopefully just make a difference in a small way that I can.
Well, Haley, that is an invitation for all of us to think, like you are saying, this is not a big deal. This is who I am. This is what we do. And part of me is thinking, yeah, at the heart of the Christian life, um, that is like there shouldn't be any differentiation. I do it because I'm Christian. I do it because it's the right thing. And if those things go hand in hand, and the truth of the matter is, I think Jesus had to teach about it because not everybody does do that or feels that way. And I was telling my own students, um, maybe 15 years ago, I had a student who was hit by a car. And I didn't really know her that well. It was probably 6 weeks into the school year. She was kind of a difficult personality, tough to read. And my colleague said, "Hey, we're going to go visit I want to go visit her in the hospital." My colleague didn't even teach her, Haley. And I was like, it's Friday afternoon. I don't want to go. I was kind of just like, I don't want to go. It's just out of my way. And it's like, what difference does that make? I am so grateful to my colleague who taught me to do that because it was the right thing to do. Did I feel better? I don't remember, but it doesn't even matter. It's the right thing to do. It is an act of love to visit somebody. And I would do that with another teacher in the future because of that example. So I know you are very close to this family and you would do that. And then, Jesus always points out, and I think it's remarkable that you're willing to spend your week. And the reminder of when people aren't easy or, easy, you have the ability because you do it for people that you love, then it might stretch us when we don't want to do it. So thank you for sharing that example.
Well, and I love, real quick what you shared about Jesus. Jesus preached about, reaching out to the poor and giving alms and doing works of charity because people weren't doing it. You're right. He wouldn't need to preach that and teach us that if we were already doing it. So clearly, we all still have lessons to learn as well.
But I think that's, that is the kingdom of God when we do it because, we know we should and we want to and we have hearts full and all of it. So I think that's the goal, that we get there, right? And we have a society where people are willing to do that. So
It
thank you for
is.
that takeaway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you. And the goal this week is also to celebrate your heritage. I will be Irish on St. Patrick's Day, so thank you for allowing me to do that and celebrate that with you. I'll probably do a little more reading about St. Patrick, so I do, have that knowledge as I continue my study of the saints this year. And we'll really keep in mind almsgiving and ways that I can give alms, even if it is just listening. I loved that you shared that, so thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. And I look forward to your report from campus. I'm curious, maybe you'll go in with eyes to see how it is a feast day. I don't know. Maybe you'll be at Mass at the Basilica, or I don't know if there'll be any special acknowledgement of it as a feast day other than the cultural celebration, which I'm sure will happen. And I'm also curious to hear how you will see Lent and that giving of alms, opportunities for your students to give alms. I do remember one of my roommates saying, because it's institutionally Catholic. So on Fridays during Lent, the cafeteria, the dining hall didn't serve meat. And one of my roommates, and she was being difficult, but she was right. She's like, well, if we're not making a sacrifice, if it's not even a choice, how are we making a sacrifice? And I understand like what she was saying, but it's an interesting, so yes, you're right, Megan. Yeah, there's no sacrifice in that sense, but to think about an institution as Catholic is, what a gift. I mean, that's who we are. Therefore, this is what we do. And so Notre Dame's making that statement. That's true at St. Francis, where I work now. We have meatless Fridays because we are a Catholic institution. I guess now I would say to Megan, okay, so find other ways to make a sacrifice on Friday, since you're not having to sacrifice eating meat in the dining hall. So what's another way you can make that challenge, so to speak? So.
Oh, I love that. And I love that she wants to continue to challenge herself because, of course, I'm thinking that just makes it easier. But of course, that's not the point.
True. Yeah. So safe travels.
Thank you. I
And,
look forward to reporting
yeah.
back and sharing, and again, our conversation again next week.
Thanks so much.